I didn't want to pick cheeses that you could just know. I wanted to pick things that were different. But I also didn't know who was going to be on the class, so I wanted to pick things that were easy enough to find for wherever you guys might be located. Campo de Montalban, if you look close on the rind, for those of you who know Spanish cheese and know Manchego, would look at it and say, but this kind of looks like Manchego to me. Well, I'll tell you a story, because a lot of you know me already, and you know I'm not still 28. I studied in Spain in the late 80s, and when I studied in Spain, this cheese was called Manchego. It's cow, goat, and sheep's milk cheese. My producer uses at least 40% of the sheep and goat, and the rest of it's cow. This style of cheese in Spain was usually like a convenience cheese. So nobody cared about it for quality. It was made because they would make the Manchego, they'd make the cow's milk cheese, they'd make the goat's milk cheese, and then they had leftovers. So they just threw it all into a vat to not waste it. And then they would have mixed milk cheese. Most of it would usually be cow, and they just sold it for a really low price. It's not the case with this cheese. I love the different flavors you can get into it. And as the seasons change, it changes a little bit, not as much as it used to, because my producer, who I'll tell you more about in a little bit, told me that he always wanted to give me great quality cheese. So he always guaranteed me a minimum of 40% between goat and sheep, where most of the time, as I said, it's at least like 80% cow. So this is really high quality. The thing is cow, goat, and sheep's milk cheese in today's world can't be called Manchego. But in the early 80s, it was a Manchego. Manchego was any cheese, pretty much of any type milk, of any age, of any color rind, as long as it was pressed and had the zigzag rind. So it took me like 2 weeks as a student to have like this 8-foot, 2 8-foot tables of zigzag rind cheeses that were like blue rinds and green rinds and pale rinds and brown rinds, and then there was 3-month and 6-month and 8 months, and then there was cow and sheep, or goat and sheep, or cow, goat, and sheep, or all sheep. So it took me a dog's age to find I wanted all sheep's milk, and at that time I wanted like a 3-month cheese, and that was Manchego to me. Fast forward like 11 years, and when I came to New York, it wasn't even 11 years. It was like 5 or 6 years. I came back to New York, and everybody talked in the cheese industry. I wasn't in the industry yet. My ex was studying English. He was helping out his dad, and we'd go to a couple of cheese events, and people were like, yeah, we have Manchego here. It's sheep's milk. And I was like, what do you mean? It doesn't have to be sheep. But everyone I talked to, they said, it's automatically sheep's milk. And it took me like 5 more years until I met my producer, and he told me that the year right after I had left Spain as a student, they created the DOP. So this DO, the denomination of origin, which is a regulatory body that wants to guarantee the control and the quality of Manchego cheese. And that means it has to be made in La Mancha, and La Mancha is comprised of, like, you have Toledo, you have Cuenca, you have Albacete, and Ciudad Real. So you can make the cheese there. It has to be 100% sheep's milk. It has to have, it's not Manchego, so you can't have the seal on it, but there's a seal which has to be on the cheese. Otherwise, you pay too much money because maybe it's a sheep's milk cheese that's not from Manchego sheep's milk. But this cheese no longer qualified to be called Manchego. And so they called it Campo de Montalban. Campo means the fields. Montalban is not Ricardo Montalban. This is not Le Plain cheese, for those of you who know the series I'm talking about. What was it? Love Boat. But the town where my producer is called La Puebla, the town of Montalban. So they just gave it a fanciful name for a cheese that could no longer be called Manchego. And so it really didn't have a huge identity. There has been people have been trying to create a DO for what's called Iberico, which is a cow, goat, sheep cheese, but I'm not even sure that they've finished that DO. But this cheese on its own, I chose because it's fun, it's easy. You can dress it up or dress it down. You can shave it, you can shred it, you can melt it, and you can just pair it with anything that you like to have. I often cut a wedge and then I cut triangles. Um, but you can cut it into a different shape too. But it's just one of those cheeses that you don't hear talked about a lot. You hear about manchego, but you don't hear about the other Spanish cheeses. I feel fortunate to work with amazing producers. My first contact was Carlos Corcuera. May he rest in peace. We were really, really close. We met in a cafeteria off the Gran Via in Madrid, and he was afraid to bring the cheese for me to taste into the restaurant. So he made me go into the garage, the smelly, fumy garage with him, where he then opened up a wheel of cheese on the trunk of his car. And I was astounded. And that was like the fifth producer I had been with, and so disappointed about the quality of cheese. And Carlos was one of my very few producers, even till today, who would call me on the phone and say, Michelle, today I've made the best cheese of my life. He so cared about quality. He went to all lengths really to support me and then Pierluigi and myself. And he and one other of our producers just believed in us for who we were. In today's world, and when you work overseas, you normally have to pay in advance before you get your product. But these guys just gave us credit. We didn't have any money. They just said, we believe in you. We're behind you. And there's not a day goes by I'm not appreciative to that. Carlos worked with his brother Ramon, so I would work with him all the time. Ramon died young at the age of 52. And after that, Carlos was never the same. And I get chills every time I tell this. And he followed 4 years later at the same age. He died mysteriously as well. And his sister, Carmen, took over. Today, if you look at, we can start the slides, please, because I'll show you Carmen and Patricia, who is the legacy, who I've been working with for the past years. This is La Puebla de Montalban, so it's 20 minutes from Toledo. It's a cute little town. Toledo's my favorite place for a lot of things, but they have really great quality milk. Here's some Manchega sheep. This is the plains of La Mancha. It's flat. This one, I know we only showed you sheep, but there's goat and cows in here too, we promise. Keep going. Here's Carmen, and here's Patricia. So we have the next two generations that we work with. Amazing people, amazing partners, and we know we can count on them for anything. And they've never wavered from their quality. They went from a teeny weeny little cheese plant to now it's this really big modern plant. One day, I'm telling you, when I went and I started working with them, they worked out of a little white house, and it was just a little white house. The mom and dad lived upstairs, and one day I pulled up and there was this big glass factory, and there was a stream in front, and there were fishes in the stream, and I went, wait, what happened to my producer? And you could see that our partnership had worked well for both of us. As we were growing, they were growing, and then Manchego exploded. Crazy. Manchego and other great cheeses like it. So we feel really fortunate to have this and to bring this to you. We hope that as you taste it, you'll kind of get some of the different flavors of the milks. There's a fun fact when we talk about, usually goat's milk are white in the paste of the cheese. Sheep's milk is yellow, and cow's milk is golden. So you'll find kind of a little bit of everything in this. It'll be like a goldeny yellow, but you really can see the different pastes. You can see in here that this is very white. This one is a little bit less white because it's been smoked, but it's still goat. The color of your quadrella was more translucent. It's actually kind of like an ivory, creamy beige sort of color, a little bit greenish when you look at the milk. And so that's something that we never used to think about either, that this industry got me to think about. Do you want to make some comments on, so with Campo, would be good with the Tarali and with the nuts for sure, and with the fig jam, and I think it would still even really hold up with the Mostarda. think it has enough of the balance of the acid and the different flavors for it to work with it too. And crabapple's perfect time now as we go into fall. Gosh, it's one of there.
I think with the saltiness and the crab apple is absolutely fabulous. And it just really brings out the best of both of them. Really nice. This is a great cheese.
I love this cheese. So,
Yep.
and by the way, the rinds, the colors of the rind actually used to have a meaning more than they do now. The colors of the rind was used to denote the age. So a clear rind was the youngest cheese, and a dark rind was the more aged cheese. But there was the first importer of Manchego to this country, screwed it all up for us. They started bringing young Manchego with a black rind, which was even illegal. But nobody wanted to, after they spent all those years as like one of the few people bringing Manchego that had a black rind, anytime you brought a Manchego that was a young Manchego and it didn't have a black rind, nobody wanted to buy it from you. So my 6-month and my 1-year age cheeses were all the correct, but I had to make a dark rind cheese for 3 months, which drove me nuts. The clear rind that I had, you know, there were so few people that were buying it. Everybody's like, we want a dark rind. The people think it's dark rind. But it's not, it wasn't supposed to be that way. And for Campo, there's no rules. It's just we wanted to pick a color that wasn't going to look like a Manchego, so we picked a nice green to match my eyes. Kidding. Sorry. Got to have a sense of humor. Always.